I want to bring in Alex Gangitano over at The Hill. Alex, good morning. Good to see you as always. Clearly a huge significance that happened over the weekend with the vote. I want to talk about the future of the Republican Party here because there was a fascinating Politico morning consult poll that just came out the day after the impeachment vote in the Senate, and 59% of Republican voters, according to this poll, say they still want President Trump to play a major role in the party going forward. What does this say about the direction now of the Republican Party after this impeachment?
Yeah, that's a great question, Baker, especially after hearing what Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell was saying, that, kind of punting it to the criminal justice system and really strongly distancing himself from the former president. And now we're seeing that, Republicans outside of Congress still want Trump to be involved with the party. And so these 7 senators who voted to convict him, McConnell, we're seeing other senators saying, kind of attributing their no votes to that the impeachment itself was perhaps unconstitutional, but, Trump was still wrong. They're distancing themselves. So I think there's a real division into what we're seeing right now in Senate Republicans kind of trying to explain what happened on January 6th without, fully impeaching the president. And then, people outside of Congress thinking that Trump's base is still really strong and that what he did that day perhaps, wasn't so bad. And I think one of the big divisions here is those Republican senators and the Republicans in the House who voted to impeach him. They were there that day on January 6th. Them, their staff, the custodial staff that they deal with every day, they all had to live through that day. And I think maybe that's also part of the division is, firsthand experiencing what they did versus, people that were outside of the Capitol or outside of Washington.
Alex, there's 2 really interesting storylines that are about to converge here with the Republicans. Mitch McConnell writing an op-ed yesterday in the Wall Street Journal, essentially saying, listen, he is going to intervene any way possible to make sure that any sort of very conservative candidates in Senate races do not get the nomination because we know he wants to be majority leader again. But we also know President Trump it sort of wants to go out against a lot of the people that he felt like maybe have wronged him. And Lindsey Graham said over the weekend that Lara Trump, President Trump's daughter-in-law, might run for that North Carolina Senate seat that's being vacated by Richard Burr, who voted to convict Donald Trump. So how does Mitch McConnell sort of weigh this? Is this going to be really difficult for him to sort of get the right candidates for him?
Yeah, that's another great question. I mean, we again have seen, Mitch McConnell here distancing himself. His wife, former cabinet member for Trump, was the first to resign after this. So I think him and, his family are ready to move on from this. But is the party ready? I mean, even just Lindsey Graham coming out and saying Richard Burr just lost his primary to Laura Trump by giving that vote is huge because, this is a institutional Republican member of the Senate, and he's already saying these people are going to get primaried and they're going to get primaried from the far left candidates. In a state like Pennsylvania, where Pat Toomey's from, that's a huge state it's a swing state. Republicans need to hold on to a state like that. So I think McConnell's saying that he's going to do everything he can to make sure that far left candidates don't primary his people, and even they can then flip some Senate seats. Of course, he wants to win back the majority in the Senate, but really focus on, his type of the Republican Party, which right now it's looking like non-Trump voters. But beyond that, there's still, fractions within the Republican Party as well.
All right, so let's switch gears now, Alex, and let's talk about the other drama that's happening on Capitol Hill, and that's with Joe Biden's coronavirus stimulus package, and more in particular, the $15 minimum wage hike and all of this. Democrats, 2 very important Democratic senators, we're talking Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, essentially saying they're not on board with that $15 minimum wage hike, even though all indications are through the budget, through the committees right now, Democrats have all intents and purposes planned on continuing to move forward with this $15 minimum wage hike. So how do you sort of see the politics playing out here? Will we see that get passed, or do you see that falling based on the fact that 2 Democratic senators say that they're not interested in it?
Yeah, there's so many interesting dynamics right now going into this. I mean, President Biden is a creature of the Senate, and so he understands that they are trying to pass this bill through a budget reconciliation process, which allows for them to not need any Republican support. It sidesteps the 60 vote threshold they need, but that means that every single Democrat has to be on board and vote for this package. And so with two Democrats, Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, already saying that they're not going to vote if it has it in the $15 minimum wage in it, is a huge hurdle for Democrats, because essentially it comes down to convincing those two people and some other moderate other moderate Democrats, that might be on the fence. And so I mentioned President Biden because he said, I think it was last weekend now, that this might not actually make it in. And he was seemed to be caving on the issue and thinking, okay, we'll do it next time. We'll do another package that can include this. I still want to raise the minimum wage. But he's kind of alone on that. We're seeing Bernie Sanders, that this is his bill that he's been pushing for years, saying I'm vowing that it will be in the bill. We're seeing Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer saying, I'm seeing how it can be in the bill. I'm still working on it. He's working with the Senate parliamentarian to make sure that the bounds of this legislation actually fits within what can be passed through reconciliation. And so no one else is really completely saying, let's just bag it, move on, not included in the bill. I still want my coronavirus release package to pass. Besides President Biden at this point.
Yeah, and so, Alex, when do you think maybe we'll see this bill make its way through Congress? Obviously, now it's it's in the committees right now, but Nancy Pelosi last week insinuated potentially we might get a vote maybe by the end of this month. We know Democrats really want to get this done before the March 14th deadline, when a lot of those unemployment benefits expire. So when do you think we might see this? Could we potentially see a vote before the end of the month?
Yeah, so like you said, there's the March 14th deadline. If somehow, and this is still up to negotiations, they can get airline relief in there. There's a April 1st deadline on that for a bunch more furloughs from the airline industry. So there are some very tough looming deadlines here. I think the House has moved really quickly on this. So Pelosi saying that a vote by the end of the month, indicates that they're ready to move ahead. If the Senate is, I think that's another question, because I could see them taking a long time to negotiate through this $15 minimum wage, seeing what else could be cut, what else could be put back in, and the Senate might be what delays it here. But with this mid-March deadline, that's the first one. If they still can pass it by, right before the deadline, which, is a classic thing that happens in Washington and out of Congress, then I'd say that, end of February might be a bit of a stretch, but mid-March, they might be able to get it by then.
Such a good point. Yes, based on Congress, how we traditionally cover these things, it'll happen March 13th at 11:30 p.m., right before the deadline. That's usually how it happens. Alex Gangitano over at The Hill. Always a pleasure, Alex. Thanks so much for coming on this morning.